Springfield Armory is not one to rest on their laurels. After the introduction of our XDE and 9mm, our engineers in Springfield worked on another caliber variant for our customers, the XDE-45. Titled the smallest polymer frame single stack hammer-fired pistol on the market today. It's more than ideal for concealed carry purposes, providing an additional option for those who either appendix carry or IWD. The double and single action trigger system is an ideal solution for those who prefer further peace of mind. Easy racking slide, ambidextrous manual safety, and decocker make this pistol the perfect fit for both new shooters and experienced shooters alike.
Ta-da! PDN Live.
Sorry, I accidentally had it playing twice in the background, so I had to fix it in the middle of the commercial, but we mostly got it.
Paid way more attention during that moment of what's going on right now at PDN Live, I'm sure. So always thanks to Springfield Armory for sponsoring. We've had several different sponsors, PDN Live. They've probably been the most frequent one. And Sam, you're filling in tonight. It's hard to say you're filling in because you're always running in the background, the PDN Live. And honestly, it feels like maybe over the last year, you've done like a half of these. So.
Yeah, Shannon is just incredibly busy and I'm incredibly available. So
here is our also regular moderator, Sam.
Hello.
Tonight's topic, everyone knows that was watching social media, but if you don't know, we usually on PDN Live pick a topic to talk about. Sometimes I'll have a guest, sometimes we'll just take questions from the field. Sometimes just ask me anything, ask Rob anything on personal offense safety stuff. But tonight, really prompted by something that happened to me yesterday, I kind of did a last minute change up on this topic too. And it's good that we were able to communicate it. And I had a lot of people ask questions in general as a follow-up when I made a social media post about this incident. So I know we've got some questions and I'll just ramble and rant and we'll see if we get some live feedback. So if you're watching tonight and you have a question specifically about what I'm about to talk about, start sending those into the comments or anywhere in the YouTube channel, wherever you are watching this.
I'm watching everywhere.
Sam's watching everywhere. The primary topic is emotional responses and how to prepare to not have your emotions override your intellect, have the emotions drive your response if you don't have a plan, or have your emotions override your plan during a critical incident. And specifically, we're talking about situations not where you obviously need to defend yourself 100% and you're doing that. Of course, those issues, having your emotions get in the way, usually becomes more of an aftermath issue. Your emotions and not being prepared for the aftermath of the defensive use of a firearm, for example, that could be tragic after you win the initial fight with the bad guy. But I'm talking more about the things that can put you in harm's way, that can create elevated risk, cause you to put yourself recklessly in the path of danger, or create potential legal jeopardy for you in the aftermath of a successful physical defense of yourself, your property, or other people you don't know, or your family members. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about, look at your dog sitting on the porch and a squirrel runs by and your dog goes running after the squirrel and gets hit by a car. That's probably a really specific, Sam, that made you sad. That's probably a really—
I like dogs.
Well, I like dogs too, right? And you don't want to be that dog. You don't want to be the dog that doesn't understand enough about its awareness, doesn't understand the context. A dog chasing a squirrel, that's what dogs do, right? People want to defend themselves. People want to protect their property. People want to get involved and do the right thing. People want to act against evil when they see it happening. But if you act like that dog just running off the porch and you get hit by the car because you weren't aware of your surroundings, you weren't aware of the totality of the circumstances, it's a net loss. It really doesn't help you. So when we think about it, like the dog's going to get fed, the dog's going to get a bowl of food. It's not like it's a wild dog that needs that squirrel to live and that it's got to risk dodging traffic, playing dog Frogger to get that squirrel so it can survive another day. Your dog gets like bowls of food and gets like snacks and gets petted and brushed and all that kind of stuff, right? So that dog doesn't need to do those things. And that's really what we're talking about tonight. How can you avoid being the dog that runs off the porch and gets hit by the car when you act in a way that you don't need to, or really that isn't prudent, or that doesn't make a lot of sense? So that's the overall topic. And I know we have some specific questions along those lines. What happened to me yesterday, we talk about that, just kind of set the stage a little bit. So yesterday, got home. I was out of town for a week back at the Eastern headquarters, ran a class with the leadership for the U.S. Concealed Carry Association's training division, did the first live fire range classes of the year near Tampa, Florida. Had a great group of guys for a pistol class, great group of people for a rifle class. Flew home and went out to run some errands. I got home Monday, went out to run some errands yesterday. And right in front of me, actually about a block before I really knew what was going on, a patrol car came in the rearview mirror, pulled over, let the patrol car go by, and he pulled over just in front of us. And my wife, who's in the passenger, she actually said, "Oh, something's going on up there. There's another car up there." So block and a half away, the patrol car pulls over, no big deal. Red light, sitting there, whatever that is, 30, 45 seconds, a minute, and continue on. Well, as we come up on this now 3 patrol car, 1 very old beat up truck traffic stop, a foot pursuit erupts. The suspect turns from his car and goes into this relatively, peaceful sort of suburban Denver community that's supposed to be very low crime. He takes off and jumps over the wall. Well, instantly, of course, the police officers, I'm driving, whatever I'm driving, 20, 30 miles an hour down the road. And now it's kind of out the side window and rear view mirror. And I see the police officers take off after him. And right away, dog on the porch. What do I want to do? There was a time when a highlight of a patrol, working patrol, a highlight would be a foot pursuit, and I used to sort of look forward to them, right? And young guy working full-time police officer, go. When I was a reserve officer working with Nashville Metro, I was with a county just north of Nashville. I was working with a lot of detectives who were not the guys who were going to get into foot pursuits. I was a younger guy, a little bit more assertive. I was in that foot pursuit situation. So right away, flashbacks like, bad guys getting away. Well, obviously, I'm not throwing my car in a park and jumping out and chasing a bad guy through the suburbs, but still the impetus to want to get involved, right? I could very easily have, picked up speed, made a right, went to the end of the block, made another right, and sort of been there to cut the bad guy off if he was trying to escape. Again, silly, right? To even think that way in a rational, sober moment. But these are the thoughts that are going through my head, quickly followed by, wait a minute, I got a 2-year-old in the back, I got my wife with me, there's 3 cops, 1 bad guy. I'm not in uniform. I happen to be a reserve deputy here in Colorado, so there is a badge there, and I could technically identify myself. Certainly, if I saw a police officer getting beat up on the side of the road, saw a police officer, getting shot or getting shot at, maybe even there. Take my wife and daughter out of the equation, maybe there's some reason I get involved, but not for a foot pursuit where there's 3 cops chasing 1 guy, and there isn't anything that draws to that level. Now, it just so happens that the next block is a large vacant lot. So I was able to pull down to that lot, make a right, park about 300 yards from the incident, and have a clear line of sight down the next road, and of course the road in our direction that the pursuit was heading towards, and got the phone ready to call 911. So that if for some reason I saw the bad guy run out of that block and no cops right on his tail, now I start thinking, maybe something worse has happened, or maybe they just turned left when he turned right. And let me call 911 and just give the description and say what we know has happened without really putting any real increase of risk exposure to me or my family. And that was the route I took. 60 seconds, a minute goes by, other police officers arrived, more patrol cars, and nothing came out. Nobody came out off that block. Dropped my dry cleaning off 10, 15 minutes later, came back, and they had the guy sitting on the curb behind the truck. There were no ambulances. There were no more officers coming. There weren't helicopters flying overhead. So obviously they did their job. Good job, Denver PD. And I just shared that experience online, and took a picture as we drove back by of the cars and the whole scene, just out the window. Shared that and reminded people, the emotions that go along with that kind of a thing. Now, from my standpoint as a former full-time police officer, reserve officer for most of the last 20 plus years, that's one set of emotions. If that had been, 4 teenagers chasing another teenager into the suburban block of houses, if it had been somebody running from my house as I pulled up, maybe my family's with me or my family's in the house, but I see somebody, maybe they were coming out of the back of my fence, maybe they were coming out of my backyard, maybe they came out of my garage, or maybe they just came out of the alley. I don't know. But any of those things could trigger that emotional response to where I jump out of the car, I chase somebody down, and I end up getting mistaken for a bad guy. I end up escalating a situation, causing a confrontation a la Zimmerman. You know, I'm going to follow the bad guy and see what he's up to while I call the police, and that turns into a confrontation. These are all things we want to avoid, right? There's no reason to get involved in a physical altercation. There's no reason to expose yourself, certainly your family, to danger. The whole have a plan and execute it thing becomes really important. So that's sort of setting the stage for what I wanted to talk about tonight. And I'll sort of turn it over to you, Sam. What are the questions that we might already had queued up, or has anything new come in?
I'm doing a little. I'm going to turn your volume down while I talk so that echo goes away. So just so everybody knows, if you want to submit questions while Rob is talking, you can submit them on the PDN article page where you might be watching this video. You can submit them on the PDN Facebook page, and you can submit them on YouTube itself. I am monitoring all those places, so please feel free to ask questions if you have them. So the first question that has come in, this is from social media. The question is, if it's legal in my town to use lethal force to defend my property, such as my truck, does that change your advice on whether or not it's okay to do so?
For instance, the idea that a lot of times I'll post links to stories about people who, you know, tragically like shoot a family member when they hear something in the night, they get their gun, they get their flashlight, they leave their bedroom, and they go search their house for the bad guy. And there's a huge difference between going to secure a family member or going to check on a family member and leaving a safe barricaded area where there is no threat and going to look for a threat just for the sake of finding a threat. That I think is a horrible idea, you know, 99.9% of the time. There's always going to be exceptions, but generally speaking, you want to lock the door, call the police, and let them come see if there's a threat, right? You don't want to expose yourself to that greater risk. The other thing that I'll share a lot when it comes to these emotional responses or these reckless, ill-advised actions would be those that are of defending property. So, for example, at the blog, maybe this is where this question came from, I referenced an article about a person who was shooting at someone who stole his truck, and the guy was driving away, and he shot out through the out from his property at the fleeing vehicle and hit someone in a house across the street behind where that vehicle was going, killed her, and had to plead guilty to manslaughter, and of course is now serving time or the penalties that go along with that. So these are the types of things that I think are tragic. When someone has the mindset and the wherewithal to be prepared to defend themselves when they need to, defend their family, maybe defend their community or defend our country, if it comes to that, the idea that they would use that force and use that tool of the firearm and use that training to defend a truck that's probably insured, that certainly, you know, shooting at your own truck isn't really the smartest thing I've heard ever if what you're trying to do is protect the truck. That just seems to me foolish and reckless and negligent. And it doesn't matter to me, getting to the question that came in through social media, it doesn't matter whether or not it's legal by the letter of the law. Now, a lot of people would say Texas is one of the most common examples. Oh, in Texas, it's legal to use force to defend property. If you know, if someone's trying to steal your truck, or they broke in your house and are trying to steal your television or something, and there may be a caveat that it has to be felony level theft or something like that, grand theft. But the reality is, while it may be by the letter of the law technically legal, we know that many people have been charged for the use of force in relation to defending property, whether it's their home property, the real estate, or the physical property, their belongings. We know that some people have been convicted. We know that it certainly draws a huge emotional aftermath. It draws some social aftermath, that both of which can be very negative. The idea that you'd be willing to expose yourself to all of that aftermath stuff over a car that is insured, or a television that maybe you have homeowners insurance or renter's insurance, maybe you don't, but still the cost of that TV. I mean, how nice is the TV? If you don't have renter's insurance, you don't have homeowners insurance, but you have a $2,000 TV, maybe reevaluate that, right? And if you don't have the security alarm, you don't have a security door, you don't use your deadbolt, you don't have cameras, right? All of the things that you should be doing to protect these very valuable and important things that you own, the things that mean something to you, that your collectibles, your family jewelry, all that stuff, your home. If you aren't protecting it, with the means that you have available to you, then you probably can't afford to deal with the legal aftermath of having shot at someone who was running out of the door with a TV, whether you hit the neighbor or not, whether you hit them or not, just the potential criminal charges. And then you add in all of the potential civil issues. And now all of a sudden you have this huge tab of paying out money, whether it was legal or not, by the letter of the law, just to prove that you were within the letter of the law, over something that's worth, what, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. And again, if it's a vehicle, there's probably some insurance involved anyway. It's very hard for me to rationalize that. And I see all people make all kinds of attempts to do it. One of the ways they do it is through the citing of, well, it's legal in my jurisdiction or it's legal in my state. And I would encourage you to talk to a lawyer and see if they would interpret the law the same way you are, because what I've heard from a lot of people who are very educated in the area of law and self-defense suggests that even if the code section specifically says this can be okay, or under certain circumstances it is okay, they still wouldn't advise their client to do it, and they wouldn't want to be, especially on the civil side, trying to justify the use of a firearm to defend, a television going out the door.
We have one new question that's come in, and I think it's a pretty interesting one. This is from Alex O. He asks, do you, you're talking about avoiding emotional responses. Do you have any sort of practices or disciplines or things that you do regularly to train yourself to not react emotionally?
Yeah, I constantly tell people not to do it. And by saying that, it repeats in my head all the time. And then I sort of feel like, I almost like a guilt, like, oh, I can't do it, right? That's probably me personally. It doesn't necessarily apply to someone who's not constantly giving out armed defense information and things like that. In all seriousness, that constantly repeating these scenarios or talking through these things with people is an act of visualization. Right. And visualization, there's a great PDN video that I linked. If you go to the Personal Defense Network blog, by the way, that's where you'll see this article where I describe the incident I mentioned at the beginning of the show in more detail. And you'll see some links in there. And one of the links towards the end of that article is exactly what Alex is asking about. So what do I do? Okay, Rob, I agree. I believe you. So what do I do? How do I do this? And visualization is the most powerful tool, I think, that exists in this realm. This sort of mental imagery, imagination, going through, imagining, okay, I'm at the street corner and I see this happen. I see a woman run out of the house screaming, "Leave me alone," with a guy coming out behind her. What am I going to do? Am I going to feel like, as a man who believes that women should be protected, am I going to throw my car in park and jump out? Am I going to roll my window down and say, "Jump in my car," like Smokey and the Bandit style, like Sally Fields is going to jump in a wedding dress? What am I going to do? Or am I going to leave my car, block traffic and create drama and honking and all this so I can sit there and watch it? Am I going to pull out my phone and try to record it? Or am I going to pull around the corner, pull over if I can to park, try not to create any more drama, try not to draw attention to myself, and continue to observe? Now I think everybody, as I go through those options, would agree that that last one is probably the best, most sane, safest, most conservative, least likely to create negative impact on me option. And that certainly is the option I would want. Well, if I think about that at 20 stoplights or stop signs in 5 different parts of my community where I drive, or if you drive all over the place, if I set that scenario, it's a convenience store, it's a gas station parking lot, it's a car that was parked on the side of the road the woman jumps out of, it's an apartment complex I'm driving by, it's a single family home that she runs into the front yard. If I run that scenario 20 times, 5, 10 different locations a month over the course of 4, 5, 6, 8 years, and then that situation or something like it happens, I've already been through it in my head, 300, 400, 500 times, for the sake of 30 to 45 seconds worth of imagining while I was sitting in a car waiting for the light to turn green, right? So that's a very low investment, high impact way to train these responses. Just imagine, and of course we talk about this for home defense too, right? Right now I could imagine, well, what if someone came in the back door? What would I do? What if someone came in the front door? What would I do? What if a brick came smashing through this window behind me? What would I do? Picking up this gun, chambering around and firing a bunch of rounds back through the window would be a bad idea, right?
I could throw my chapstick.
chapstick would be irrelevant. I'm not sure.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
but grabbing the gun and grabbing the flashlight and moving behind this counter that I'm sitting at, right, which has I've got granite and I've got the steel sink and there's a dishwasher over here and whatever other structure is here, plus the dining room table and the structure of the outside of the house. Maybe that I wouldn't know if it was a brick. Was it a brick? Was it a gunshot? Was it a rock, cinder block? Was it a cat? What was it that got thrown through the window? Well, getting to a position of cover and safety first, and then being in a position to observe and see what's going on was the visualization. That's the work through. And I don't have to, I'm talking it through out loud right now, but I could just imagine that. So I think really visualization becomes the most important tool. To do that, you're a concealed carry person, you're standing in the convenience store. By the way, this isn't paranoia. This isn't what if this happens, I'm so scared that this could happen. This is what if this happens, I have taken steps in my life to be trained, to be equipped, to be prepared to defend myself. But what about these areas where it's not so clear, right? Some guy kicks that door in right now, or fires a shotgun, blows the lock on the door, kicks it in, and points the shotgun at me. That's a reaction that is immediately followed by a response to a lethal threat. I don't have to process information there. But on the other hand, a shotgun being fired out in the front yard or a gun going off out in the front yard, that's something I have to think about. Do I run immediately to a window? Do I turn on a light? Do I draw attention to myself? Do I open the door to open, and look outside to see what's going on? Some of those ideas are good. Some of those ideas are really, really bad. And only by thinking about them ahead of time do I get to have a planned response that hopefully is executed, right? Have a plan, work the plan. Don't get sucked in by emotion, right? Curiosity, anger, fear, ego, right? I'm offended that guy keyed my car. I'm offended that person cut me off in traffic. So now I'm going to go all road rage, right? That's the key, Alex, is thinking ahead of time in the spare moments of your day. What if? What would I do if this kind of a scenario happened right now? And really visualizing it. The more realistic, the better. And when you follow that link at the end of the article, you'll see that I spoke about this with Ken Murray, who is like the godfather guru guy of reality-based training. And when you talk about a scenario or a live simulation, or especially the scenarios with role players, that's all pretend. And we can't afford to do every scenario with well-trained role players in realistic areas with good facilitators and instructors and guides and coaches there. So you got to be your own everything. Be your own role player. Imagine the bad guy. Imagine the bystanders. Imagine the people you really don't know what's going on. Because what if that woman is leaving the convenience store saying, "Leave me alone," to an undercover cop, and you're going to jump out and get involved? Well, she was picked up for, or she was about to be picked up for shoplifting, and she's trying to pretend it didn't happen and get away from that cop. And you don't see the badge, and now you've interjected yourself into a situation that could escalate very, very badly for you, very, very quickly. And what, you thought you were just helping a woman out because maybe she was being, abused by the guy you saw, because that's our instant thought process, I think, as men, especially men who carry guns and are interested in protecting people in general, and certainly the family and women in our lives. That's where we go. But maybe that's not what's happening. And only by pausing and observing a little bit longer can we really figure it out.
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, since running these events, I do that imaginary, like, how would I defend myself in this situation sort of thing. So you've actually rubbed off on me a little bit. Good.
See, there you go. And it's funny, people, and for those who, I don't know if we've covered this before, but on PDN Live, but I talk about it a lot in the industry. I talk about a lot at classes. People will say, "Oh, I was in a gun shop and the owner came out and he was carrying this kind of gun. Does that make it a good kind of gun?" Well, he may just be like a gun enthusiast who happens to own a gun shop. It doesn't mean what he's choosing is a good example for you. There are people in the gun industry that are working with the guns that don't necessarily think about them the same way an educator and instructor would, or maybe the way that you would. And there are other people like you in the firearms industry. You're in the firearms industry, right? Like if somebody asks you what you do, you probably don't say, "Oh, I work in the personal defense, self-defense education realm." But a few days a month, a few hours here and there, and then on our PDN Lives, that is what you're doing. But you're not a personal defense educator. You're not into this, and you don't, I don't think you carry a gun. I don't think that you go out and shoot every weekend. But your exposure to this information hopefully does get you thinking about it. And I think that's important to remember. There are IT people, there are social media people, there are advertisers, there are
copywriters, right? I write for a living, and now I think of pens differently than I've ever thought of pens before, thanks to you.
And that's awesome. there are so many people involved in everything we do in the shooting industry who aren't gun people or aren't self-defense fanatics or aren't safety fanatics, that the more we expose people to what it is we're doing with education, you know, hopefully the person that works with us, you help me share this information with tens of thousands of people every month, that hopefully is also having a positive effect on you and your family.
Okay, let's get back to these questions. We have a question from Joe H. He said, I'm very familiar with your should versus could position in regard to using force, but what if I need to use force to defend property that is critical to my life or my family member's life, like a purse with prescription medicine in it?
That's a really good question in this context, because so many people bring stuff like that up. And I think, and what was the name on that one?
Joe.
Okay, so I don't know if Joe, if that's hypothetical for you, or if there really is like critical, you know, if you don't take it on the hour, every hour kind of a thing, or maybe it's something for a family member in that person with Joe female, or if it's someone asking for his wife. But just conceptually, even if it's a hypothetical question, I feel like a lot of people will throw this out as sort of a red herring in the comment threads. Anytime we talk about defending property, they'll say, well, you know, who are you to say he shouldn't have shot that person? Maybe his kid's medicine was in the car. If it's vital, life-saving medicine or some medical device or whatever, then it probably isn't sitting out in the car at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? If it's really something that their kid or that they may need in any moment, or something they're supposed to take, you know, every hour on the hour. I mean, if you're so critically dependent on medicine or a device, you know, I'm not talking about an EpiPen, right? You can't have an EpiPen in your backpack.
Like, I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I have an insulin pump, or I carry a glucose meter with me, things like that, that might be considered critical, but.
Okay, that's perfect. So that's like, what happens? So now, are you wearing a pump?
Yep, it's like connected to my body.
If somebody rips that thing off, like what's the first 10 minutes and then the next 10 minutes and then the first hour, like what happens?
Without insulin for like an hour, I would start to get like sick or nauseated. But like the first 10 minutes, I would be fine.
So I think this speaks to my point with the EpiPen, right? You can't, if somebody picks up your backpack or breaks the window in your car and goes to drive away while you're walking out from Walmart, and you are allergic to bees, and you're going to shoot the person because you might get stung by a bee before you can get another EpiPen in your possession, or your kid might get stung by a bee, I think that's crazy talk. I think you're imagining scenarios to justify your inappropriate use of force. And I guess hearing that story, I would sort of say the same thing with the pump, right? Or certainly the meter. I mean, the meter gets taken. You go to Walgreens and you get another meter. It's what is it, $20, $100? I don't know what it is, but it's got to be less than the legal bill, the social, emotional aftermath of shooting someone over the purse that has the meter in it. As far as the pump goes, you know, if you're backpacking in the Rocky Mountains and you're, you know, you're 12 miles from your vehicle, now that insulin pump becomes way more important, right? Yep. Because if that insulin pump goes and you don't have your backpack with your, you know, needles or whatever it is you need.
Within like 3 hours, you would start being ill enough to where you might need to go to a hospital.
Right, and you need that 3 hour. It would take you more than 3 hours potentially to get back to civilization. So you got no cell phone. Now that is life critical, important thing. And is it worth defending with lethal force? Absolutely, because now you're not defending the pump, you're not defending the purse, you're not defending the EpiPen. You're literally not way out on a tangent. You're literally defending your ability to stay conscious, stay alert, stay mobile, stay ambulatory, to be able to get back to civilization and deal with if somebody's trying to rip an insulin pump off you, there's probably other potential physical issues as well, right? So that is completely legitimate use of force in that case. But I think sometimes people go to like, oh, well, I'm taking, you know, I don't know, what do they take? An antidepressant, so they're taking an anti-inflammatory, they're taking a, you know, maybe it's a antibiotic, right? My doctor prescribed an antibiotic and it's in the purse, and the guy tried to steal my purse, so I shot him to defend the medicine that I needed. Well, you can go get another prescription. That's not a need kind of defense thing in the way I'm talking about it, right? Now, again, there could be other issues that make it a need to defend yourself, but generally speaking, critical life-saving equipment or life-saving medicine The reason you're using force isn't to defend the property, it's to defend that next step, which is your life or the life of the other person who is depending upon that stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. Oops. Sorry, I accidentally opened something. Sorry, guys, I clicked on iTunes and now I have to close it. Okay.
It's 7:30. We're supposed to tell people to become registrants. If you haven't registered for the free PDN newsletter and you're watching this right now, it's kind of a no-brainer. Go over to PDN and sign up for the newsletter. It's free. Yes, you will see a pop-up that says, you know, become a premium member, or you will see, you get an email about it, special offers and all that. You know, here's what I tell you, and I know this is like I'll say Shannon's this week, so I get to do the little pop-up window. Like if you've never been to personaldefensenetwork.com, and you haven't been there in a long time, and you're not already a premium member or a gold member, the window is going to pop up. Hit X, just close it, and close it for the first month that you go there, because there are literally hundreds. I think there's like 110 or 12.
There's a lot.
There's hundreds of pages of information at PDN, articles and videos from myself and a team of contributors. Read the articles, watch the videos that are free. There are hundreds, if not thousands of them. You'll find value. And when you find value, just like hopefully you're finding value in this free PDN live event tonight, that will justify the next time you get an email to that because you registered for our newsletter, the next time the newsletter comes through and it says, hey, it's I don't know what's coming up, St. Patrick's Day special, you know, join for $10 for your first year, or you know, Valentine's Day special, you and your wife can join, for you and your husband can join, whatever, you and your best friend that you're going on a date with can join. You know, if there's a couples thing for Valentine's Day, sign up, because there will be a sale. There will be an opportunity to join and become a premium member. You might decide you want to take the online classes, in which case you should definitely become a PDN Gold member, because as a Gold member, you get discounts. You get some free classes right off the bat, and you get some significant discounts on the PDN Academy distance education stuff, all the online courses. You got me, you got Caleb Causey, you got a bunch of other great instructors contributing there as well. And when you take those courses online at the discount, you'll basically pay for your PDN Gold membership really quick, like within a month or two. So find the value first, take advantage of our sales, or take advantage of the discounts that come with Gold membership, and, you know, help us do what it is we're doing for free, which is educating you and as many people as we possibly can in as many different facets and aspects of personal safety and security as we find people are interested in. And again, we cover medical, unarmed, home security, safety.
And we have multiple years of these PDN live events on the PDN YouTube as well. If you really enjoy just listening to Rob shed wisdom on us endlessly, we've got a lot of those, and those are all free to access as well.
There's also PDN Training Talk, another free opportunity you have to learn from PDN. Grant Cunningham hosts PDN Training Talk. That show airs 2 Thursdays. It's every other Thursday. I guess the 2nd and 4th Thursday of the month, maybe, if I remember correctly. And there's so there's one coming up tomorrow. He's got Alessandro Padovane on, I believe. That one's going to be great. He just recently had one actually covering a lot of what we're talking about tonight. He talked with Aaron Israel of Fundamental Defense, who's down in Texas. He talked about some of these topics with him on a recent training talk. So between the free videos, the free articles, the blog, Personal Defense Network Live, which we're doing here, and training talk, really, you don't ever have to pay a dime. But I want you to take advantage of it. And I want you to sign up so you get those email newsletter alerts, and you're kind of part of the team and you're part of the community, and ask questions in the comment threads and other things you think are valuable with the people in your social media or your real, you know, live space world. Let them read this stuff. Let them watch the videos, because just like Sam sort of testified to earlier, just being around this stuff makes you start thinking differently. And hopefully that, if nothing else, that's what PDN has done, is help a lot of different people think armed defense, personal defense, safety, security, and because lives in general, even if it comes to something like the medical information, being prepared for that kind of an emergency. So commercial over.
Okay, I'm going to get us back to our questions then. We have one that was submitted on social media by Mary G when you kind of told your initial story. She said, I read the blog article you wrote about witnessing a foot pursuit. Did you have any concern for the people who lived in the neighborhood?
Yeah, it's interesting. That was not at all an immediate, I can't say that was one of the first things that flashed through my head. It was actually brought up there. I had started to think about, you know, you sort of, again, you visualize, right, what could be happening, because again, we parked significantly far away, but you could still there was no foot pursuit crossing the streets leaving that block. So something was still going on inside of that group of, 15, 25 houses, whatever it was. And you start thinking, well, everything, right? Like, did he pick up a toddler and put a knife to its throat and there's some kind of standoff going on? Did he kick a back door in? Is he hiding under, a tarp in somebody's backyard and the police can't find him? Or have they already captured him? Are they talking to him? So I did start to think about other people. It came to a crux actually when my wife saw a person walking their dog and sort of heading parallel to the event that we had watched. And her, she's a nurse and very much more into, like many people, thinking about protecting other people than she spends more time about that, whether it's our kids or just people in general, than thinking about protecting herself. So her thought was, oh no, look, that person's going to walk over there. And the insinuation being we should go warn them. And again, that's increasing risk. It's increasing potential complication. It's, opening this whole can of worms, like flagging a person down. Just, imagine you're walking your dog and like some people pull up next to you, roll the window down and say, hey, right away, that's already potentially conflict for that person who otherwise has no reason to be worried in life. They're just out walking their dog. And now we're potentially creating a conflict. And they're like, what if they're like stranger danger and they're ignoring you? And now my wife's, hey, we're just trying to help you. And now it sounds like some kind of weird scam. Like, hey, we're going to help you, come over to our car. And the whole thing just immediately, I'm like, I hear what you're saying. I understand it, but that person's still 250 yards away. And then that person crossed the street and went in the other direction. So it sort of took that out of the equation. But that question is what I think drives a lot of people. And again, that's the emotion. So there's my wife's emotional response was she had no inclination. She had no, she was not like, stop the car and thinking about jumping out and tackling the guy. She wasn't thinking about helping the cops. She wasn't thinking about cutting off the other person. That never entered her mind. But the minute she saw another person entering potentially into the middle of that conflict or stumbling into a gunfight or whatever she was envisioning, then she was compelled to act. And that was her emotional response was, hey, maybe we should go save that person. And, there's a 99% chance that person is going to go about their lives with no impact whatsoever from that foot pursuit. And what happens then if we interject ourselves in that person's life, that who knows what domino effect that has to where it could affect that person, it could affect us, it could affect a lot of different people in play negatively, right? Or, you could play it the other way. Well, what if you told that person that and they said, oh, wow, I didn't know that. I had no idea that could happen in our neighborhood. And that person starts carrying pepper spray and defends themselves from a mugger, rapist, physical attack 3 weeks later. All of those what ifs, again, you got to play the odds and you got to do what's smart.
Pretty quickly, it seems.
Yeah, and the plan has to be, avoid conflict, avoid escalating risk to yourself or those you care about, avoid stumbling into situations where you don't understand what's going on. There's another article which I should have linked in that original one, and I didn't. I'll try to put it in the comments thread underneath of this live. There's a sort of, I call it the Good Samaritan checklist, right? You see something happening, first and foremost, do you really know what's going on, right? Do we really know what's going on? Is this person really walking into something dangerous? The next thing you want to make sure is that if you're going to get involved, are you balancing the good you can do versus the risk that you're exposing yourself to? You want to make sure that's in balance. You want to make sure some of the other things on the Good Samaritan checklist are like, are you doing the least amount possible, right? In other words, I could, honk the horn, jump out of the car, fish out my reserve deputy badge and say, hey, sheriff's deputy, you come over here right now. That's sort of like way overkill for just, hey, the cops are over there. I don't know what's going on. You might want to walk your dog over to the left. So am I doing the least amount of interference I can, the least amount of exposure to myself to potential danger, the least amount of violent or other aftermath that I would have to face? Now, these are big questions. So the Good Samaritan checklist is another way to sort of balance that emotional, I don't want to see somebody get hurt because I just sat on the sidelines, but at the same time, I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. And sometimes that's what people do when they don't go through that checklist.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, we've got another question that was submitted by email. And they say, the quote about evil triumphing because good men do nothing is often cited to justify people getting involved in other people's issues and sometimes actions that approach vigilantism. vigilantism. Do you agree or not agree with this quote?
Oh, that is good timing on that one, Sam. That's pretty much, it's kind of like what we were just talking about, right? That
Yeah.
That fear that if you do nothing, something bad is going to happen, and people put that mantle of responsibility on themselves. That quote comes up a lot. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head who it is.
Let me look it up.
Bertrand Russell. Okay, you look it up, and it's all that is needed for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. It is a powerful quote, and it definitely is one that gets thrown out a lot by those who would justify their actions in defending others or in interjecting themselves in the situation.
Interestingly enough, that quote is the original person who said it. It's disputed, but it is most regularly attributed to an Irish philosopher named Edmund Burke, though JFK said it in a speech once, which is how it got really well known.
Everything he said apparently became popular. So the idea that there's something powerful at the core of that, right? It stirs people, and it's used by a lot of people to justify what I think is their plan, which is, if I see evil, I am going to act because I don't want to be responsible for not having stopped evil, right? I think that what we need to, in a practical sense, so as a speech, as a piece of philosophy, Irish or otherwise, as a political sort of crowd, rousing speech, or to get funding or to get approval for a military action or whatever JFK was trying to do with that, it totally makes sense that it would be saying that to take from that, well, you need to stop evil. It is your responsibility, and you must stop evil if you are a good person. And by default, you are letting evil win if you do not stop evil. I think that there's a big gap between you have to stop evil and for good men doing nothing. Because did I do nothing, right? I didn't just like change the radio station and drive on in yesterday's event, right? But I also didn't throw the car into park and jump out. Nor did I, floor it and four-wheel drift through the corner to get my car into the alley to try to run the guy over because he was evil. I don't know if he was evil, right? Maybe they were doing training for all I know, right? Like I have no idea at that instant what's going on, and it does not become. I do not take on the mantle of responsibility to fight evil the minute I see something that might be evil happening in my presence. And I think that's that extreme that people will use that quote to sort of justify is, well, I had to pull my gun out and shoot at the shoplifter at Home Depot, as a woman did, a few years back. I had to do that, pull my gun out to stop the shoplifter because shoplifting is evil and it deprives hard-earned product that they're trying to sell in a legitimate business to other people who might need that product to make their home more secure or safer, stronger, whatever. Like the rationalization goes on forever. At the end of the day, doing nothing is, shoplifter, and walking away. There's lots of things you can do between that and pulling your gun out and chasing the shoplifter out in the parking lot because you're offended, because your ego was hurt, because you have this strong emotional desire to see thieves punished or justice done or whatever that is, or maybe you have a lot of stock in Home Depot. I don't know what motivates that, but it can't be the idea that it's the all or nothing gambit kind of a thing, right? That's not true. So I didn't do nothing. Evil could have potentially been affected by my actions that I did. And I feel as though the actions I took in that moment, and I hate just kind of obsessing over that one thing, but it is what brought tonight's topic up. We can look at any number of examples of situations where people have made a phone call, people have pulled somebody aside and said, hey, I'm concerned about your safety. So it's just as simple as asking someone like, hey, are you okay? Or you seem a little scared about going to work, or you seem a little bit scared about being with that person. Is something wrong, right? If you have fear that someone is being stalked or bullied or abused by another person, you can call that person aside and just open up the door to a conversation and maybe give them some resources or help them out, offer to help them out, come stay at my place. Or you can, sneak up behind the person you think is abusing them, hit him in the back of the head with a bat, step on their throat, point a gun in their face, and say, hey, you better leave so-and-so alone. You know, both of those things would be intervening, and neither of them are doing nothing. One of them is vigilantism, and the other one is being a good friend, right? And looking out for the person you care about. So I think that maybe sums up how I feel about it. I don't dismiss the quote, but I think the quote has to be applied in a practical context.
Nothing is so black and white or so simple.
It's not all or nothing.
Yeah.
Dude, it's not intervene at the most
maximum
level that you can, or you're letting evil win. I think that's the way some people throw it out there, and that's hyperbolic and silly. No,
that makes a lot of sense. We have a question I think that's pretty interesting that came in on the YouTube page. They said a question came up in a recent class about responding to a threat outside the home that is not attempting to gain entry. By being called out, will someone then place themselves in legal gray area, or what's your take on this?
So a potential threat outside of their home, and when that last piece, that by being called out, like
I'm not sure exactly what they mean by that.
Maybe they'll add a clarification, but I'm envisioning someone in your front yard saying, hey, Rob, come on out here. We got some things to discuss. And obviously this person is upset with me or mad at me. And I strap my gun on and my medical kit's on my ankle, and I go outside knowing that there is a potential conflict, whether it's physical or otherwise, about to happen. And I walk into that situation. Yeah, that could certainly play out really poorly for you, right? If the guy says, I'm going to kick your ass, come on out here, and you're like, oh, he's not going to kick my ass, and you put your gun on and you go out there and you're like, hey, buddy, calm down. And the minute he doesn't calm down, you like brandish your gun and say, ha, you're not kicking my ass, I'll kick your ass or whatever. I think that's foolish, right? If that's what you mean, yeah, that would be all around bad. If, on the other hand, what you mean is someone comes to your door, knocks on your door, say, hey, I'd like to talk to you for a minute about a really awesome opportunity. And you open the door and you step out on the porch, and maybe your house is a mess, or your wife's cooking dinner or whatever. You just step out there to talk to them. Maybe they're going to inspect your roof to see if there's hail damage or something. And now it turns into a violent confrontation. No, of course not. You walked outside under the auspices of having a conversation with a solicitor who was offering a service, or maybe someone was you're collecting for a charity, and then something escalates. And again, you carry a gun all the time anyway, and you walk outside carrying your gun. That's not at all the same as, let's say the guy down in Texas, right? The guy that many people celebrated as like the ultimate hero of awesome, who shot at and wounded the church shooter, right?
Oh, right.
Let's look at this, right? What happened? He says, oh, there's gunshots outside. Wow. And whatever he heard, and he shared with his daughter at that moment, took him to the level where he needed to go get a gun. Right. So he said something dangerous is happening out there. I need a gun. And this guy isn't someone who thought this all the time, obviously, because his gun wasn't even loaded. His magazines weren't even loaded. Right. We know this. He had to go open a safe, open a box of ammo, pull out a magazine, and start loading the magazine. So this guy is not the guy sitting on the couch ready.
Yeah.
Something's happening that spurs him on to do this. Meanwhile, what does his daughter do? He lets his daughter leave the house, get in a car, and drive over to the church to see what's going on. So right away, it's like, talk about emotional responses, right? The girl's emotional response of, I'm curious, I want to go see what's going on. The guy's emotional response of, I haven't prepared for this at all, but now I think I need to load my gun and then leave my house and go look for trouble. And then, he shoots at the guy who he sees. Obviously, he hit the guy probably once there, maybe twice. It's kind of fuzzy. It was a couple months ago, but he hits the guy. And then what happens? The guy gets in his car. He shoots at a fleeing vehicle. Again, nothing but emotion. That's the dog running off the porch. And then what's he do? With a gun in his hand, he flags down a guy driving down the road in Texas, right? He's kind of lucky he didn't get shot right there. This guy's luck never runs out, right? His daughter gets lucky. He gets lucky with not hurting anybody with his shooting at a fleeing vehicle. He gets lucky that the bad guy didn't shoot him. He gets lucky that the guy didn't think he was trying to carjack him when he flagged him down. And it just kind of keeps playing out this way, right? That he's just lucky. He doesn't get into an accident. The truck doesn't roll flying down the road, driving faster than maybe that guy normally drives his pickup truck. Now, all of that was emotion, right? All of that was emotion. That guy got called out of his house. If any one of those things had gone wrong, he hit a bystander, his daughter got hurt, his when he flagged the truck down, the guy pulled out a gun and shot him, or guy pulled out a gun and said, "Get away from me." And he reflexively, we know this guy's driven by emotion, turns his rifle on the guy and shoots the guy in the pickup truck. Like he cuts somebody off in traffic and causes a fatal rollover, hits a kid that wanders into the street chasing a ball. I mean, a million things could have gone wrong for this guy. He, karma was on his side that day, and he's, held up as a hero. Then what happened? If you saw the interviews with him right after that event, you saw a guy broken down in tears with the aftermath and the realization of what had happened and what he had been involved in, and questioning all kinds of things in the aftermath of that. So that even though he got super crazy lucky at every step of his emotional response in the Texas event, he left his house and had a million things that certainly could have been held against him or used against him in terms of him inserting, overstepping, being a little bit reckless, and being very reckless in several instances. A lot really. And today, I imagine, based on what I saw in that a few weeks right afterwards, has this huge emotional, social, potentially psychological aftermath that he's dealing with from having been involved in the event. Things that were heroic, maybe. Did he do things that were brave? Yes. Did he do things that needed to be done? I don't know. That guy ended up killing himself, and he was leaving the church at the moment this guy got in touch with him. He was already leaving the church. He was already done shooting the rifle. I don't know if this guy really made things better. He made things worse for himself, and things could have been much, 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 much worse for himself and his community and his family had that played out differently. So maybe that, and I had no intention of kind of going off on that tangent at the end of the show here, but that's what jumps into my mind when what's the worst case scenario of someone who goes out of their house with the best of intentions, but no real plan, being driven by emotion.
Yeah, I guess sorry, I was very pulled into your story there. So, because I was familiar with the story, but not that familiar. We have time for maybe one or two more questions. I've got another one that came in through YouTube.
Okay. This
question does seem to kind of imply you feel a certain way about something, but I'm just going to ask it the way they did and let you kind of untangle it. Moto Otto asked, why do you think there's such a disconnect between people who carry guns and getting unarmed self-defense training?
Unarmed self. Let's take the premise as wrote, right? It is pretty much a established sort of cliche that many people who carry guns are somehow like totally unaware of or not prepared for defense other than using the gun. Clint Smith has said for decades, if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. If all you have is a gun, then your only solution is the gun, whether it be to brandish it or to shoot it. And there definitely are a lot of people who are in that boat. And that's why I say let's take the premise as it's stated, because it is incredibly true that there are a lot of people who don't train enough with their handguns, let alone do a lot of unarmed training. And for the vast majority of people, in my experience, who do take handgun training seriously and meet their responsibility to be well armed and well trained inside the home or outside of the home, they don't spend a commensurate amount of time, or it would be an appropriate amount of time given the likelihood of need, worrying about their unarmed defense or defense using tools other than the firearm. And on the one hand, shame on us in the firearms community for not spreading that message and making it easier to do. I started doing that kind of training in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think the first open enrollment inside of law enforcement, inside of executive protection, we were doing extreme close quarters counter ambush classes, extreme close quarters tactics classes that involved grappling and weapon retention stuff and close quarters striking, so Muay Thai, elbows, kicks, strikes, things like that, along with your live fire training and integrating that for armed professionals. We ran the first open enrollment class at Valhalla in 2003. Shortly thereafter, at the same time, separate but kind of concurrent, a guy named Craig Douglas, who's a PDN contributor. I think he's joined me on PDN Live here. We've done videos together and worked together a lot over the years. He was doing it inside of law enforcement, mostly inside of the undercover narcotics investigations world. He was doing this kind of integrated training. I think he offered his first public enrollment course in like 2004, 2005. The guy who's busiest doing this, right? He has a company called ShivWorks, and he does a lot of integrated training. Now, meanwhile, a lot of other people have started doing this along the way, but none of us, other than Craig, really make it the focus of what we do. Now, the statistics, you can argue back and forth about twisting statistics. Tom Givens, who works a lot with Craig, and he's also a PDN contributor. We use his data as the best set of data that I'm aware of for personal defense events. He doesn't report a lot of incidents involving shooting while in contact. So while we anecdotally know that unarmed defense should be integrated with firearms from a common sense standpoint, there really doesn't seem to be a lot of justification for an overt amount of integrated training. So take that out of the equation, because that's sort of what I've obsessed over. I don't do a lot of unarmed training except the integrated stuff. And that's what we've talked a lot about at PDN. Let's just talk about general unarmed defense. And that is incredibly important. The idea that you aren't going to have your gun with you all the time. Sometimes the gun isn't the appropriate tool. And sometimes in that integrated scenario, the gun's still in the holster and you get attacked at extreme close quarters within two arms reach, and you need to defend yourself. You need to stop the knife attack, the club, the punches, shield yourself, whatever it's going to be. Well, that training just honestly isn't promoted, isn't offered enough, isn't talked about enough, in my opinion, in the concealed carry training level and in the vast majority of classes. One of the reasons, shooting is more fun. A lot of people look at shooting as something they do to be prepared to defend themselves, but in reality, it's also their hobby. They're gun collectors, they're enthusiasts, they like to go out and shoot. It's easier for them. It may be more expensive to buy bullets than it is just to buy some mat time, but the sweat equity that you have to put in to really be prepared to defend yourself without the gun in those situations where the unarmed response is needed or more appropriate, that takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more effort. And I think that's why I think it's basic human nature. It may not be as much fun for a lot of people who are active in gun world because they're already into guns, and it's a lot more work. And then when you combine that with the idea that we don't promote it, we don't make it easier, we don't lower that barrier to entry inside of gun world, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we say, oh, they're not interested in that, so we're not offering it. And we're not promoting it because it doesn't actually help our businesses, or it doesn't meet with our core competencies as far as teaching defensive shooting. So we're all at fault. It comes down, as always, to education and promotion of the reality of the importance of unarmed training. I think one of the things we've seen a huge evolution in the last couple of years is medical training. We talk about it a lot. There are hardly any top-level firearms instructor today hasn't addressed the issue of how important medical training is, doesn't stress carrying a tourniquet or other gunshot wound response materials, doesn't stress having them on their body or easily accessible on the range. And 5 years ago, that was unheard of. When we did a PDN tour update, and I shouldn't say unheard of, but it wasn't nearly as common. And 10 years ago, it was not a big deal. We did a PDN update, I think it was like 2012, 13, with Mike Will, one of our CFS instructors who we tragically lost in 2017 to a motorcycle accident, and he had a prosthetic leg. And we faked a gunshot wound from a student in a class by laying him down on the ground, and he actually put a round through the bottom of his prosthetic. And we used that as the intro to get a lot of attention on the importance of medical training. And it was amazing after that how many instructors who, great guys, teach all over the world, excellent firearms instructors, came to me and said, that really made me think about it a lot more than I ever had. Intellectually, they always knew it was a thing, but that video, I think, started changing a lot of things, at least in the sphere of influence that PDN has. And we've seen a huge change, a huge shift in the stressing of medical training over the last couple of years in the firearms community. Hopefully, we will see, we saw years and years ago, fitness was stressed. Maybe we'll see, maybe I'll put out the extra effort in response to that question in 2018 to remind people once again that integrated training and the standalone unarmed defense is incredibly important as well. Maybe we'll get Cecil Birch on. Cecil Birch is going to be a PDN contributing instructor on the tour this year. So maybe we'll get him back on to talk about how to get people started. In the meantime, there's plenty of information from Cecil Birch and others on unarmed defense, of course, at personaldefensenetwork.com. The end of the night. So I'll remind you once again, go sign up for the free newsletter. If you've already found value in the PDN Lives, in training talk, in any of the information you've seen for free, become a premium member. Get access to all that other information, all the extra information that is available to our premium members, mostly in the form of video. Probably about 30 to 40% of the videos we post online. You can see the previews for free, but you get into the real meat, the deep context, the deep content. If you're a premium member, and then if you want to take the online classes especially, and if you want to be part of our PDN Gold member online community, a private group for question and answer that I pop into every once in a while, and make sure that people are getting their questions answered. I use that as a feedback group to tell us what's working at PDN and what could maybe be improved. So PDN Gold members are incredibly important to us as well. personaldefensenetwork.com. You can learn all about those different options and register for that free newsletter.
Before we go, do you want to let people know what you're going to be up to in the next few weeks until we come back for our next live event?
We have, it's a very slow time of the year for training. Like I said, I did 3 classes last week, the instructor development class, did the first rifle class and first pistol class of the year. And I'm doing a family safety, firearm safety seminar for families at Bristlecone here at my Western headquarters in Denver. I'll be over there at they're kind of my home range when I'm here in the Denver area. I'll be there Saturday working with families. And we have a full course. There's probably going to be, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 different families there with kids ranging from 6 to 16. We're going to talk about security. We'll talk about, just I had some things we never even got to talk about. We're talking about securing your firearms from kids with, kind of inexpensive, simple, easy to use things all the way up to, some of the very fancy, biometric, quick access kind of things that go on as far as protecting the unauthorized kids on the range. We'll do 2 automatic 22 rifles with them. That's a good time. We are continuing to work on the development of the PD10. I'll be at SHOT Show next week, of course, the big industry trade show. There'll be all kinds of live events, broadcast from me and Latham. We'll be doing some Worlds Collide stuff. I'll be doing some stuff from my own personal live and from PDN's Facebook page. If you didn't get to see this earlier, we showed this off. It's the first custom Cerakote PD10. This was done by Savage Cerakote, another New Jersey guy, like I originally was, and our company, of course, is PD10. Avidity Arms is based in New Jersey, and so is Savage Cerakote. They did this awesome thin blue line themed one. And this one, I was going to reveal this tonight. It's the first time anybody's seen this one outside of a very small handful of people. This is going to be shown off also at our booth at SHOT Show. This is Blown Deadline's Star Wars Stormtrooper Blaster sidearm themed PD10.
That is
which
really
I think
cool. So, as a resident nerd, that is really very cool.
Exactly. I'm a Star Wars geek, right? So I thought I have admired this guy's work. He does all the Boba Fett blasters and the Stormtrooper stuff and the Rebel Alliance stuff. Obviously this one has the Viridian light and laser on it to kind of get that futuristic kind of thing going. But Mike does a great job with Blown Deadline. I was really excited to get him to work on one of my guns at some point. And obviously, it's awesome to me to have it be one of the guns I actually designed. So we've got all these cool guns we're going to be showing off. We got the Savage Cerakote one, the Joint Force Enterprises did this dip. This is Cryptek, of course, was our camo sponsor for the tour vehicle last year. And I would say that you may very well be seeing them again on another vehicle in 2018. So we've got all kinds of cool stuff going on with the PD10, and we're working towards the launch of the collaboration with USCCA. We're working again with them very, very diligently to launch the live fire training programs that are going to come out this spring. They're partnering up with PDN on a lot of things as well. So their logo will be on the PDN tour truck again this year, United States Concealed Carry Association. So there's a lot going on. A lot of it's behind the scenes this time of year as we build up to some big, big things launching in the spring.
Fantastic. If there's nothing else you have to say, we can go offline now.
I think we put a solid hour in. Sam, I appreciate your jumping into the hosting role, the moderating role that you do so well now. I know you've always been very reluctant to do it, but I like the hat, and I appreciate you jumping in tonight. I'll see Shannon next week at SHOT Show, and I'm gonna tell her that honestly, her job, her position here is in jeopardy. She's going to so I know she is very busy. She's working with FLIR and a bunch of other great companies, doing a lot of great things. But the stuff that she is doing is important and valuable, and I'm sure she's getting a lot of life satisfaction out of it. But we don't need her here anymore. Shannon, if you're listening, love you.
We're best friends now. Yeah. I know all about everything.
Wow, everything. Well, hopefully I'll see you next week, and I'll remind her that Sam, you're always ready to do a great job now that you are far more confident in front of the camera than you were, 2 years ago when we started this thing. So I appreciate you.
I don't think anyone wants to hear about my social anxiety.
See, look, you're thinking about self-defense, and you're talking to people about it, and you're sharing your observations about stories and fielding questions. And I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of everybody behind the scenes. There's a lot of people behind the scenes at PDN that nobody gets to see. Sam has emerged from behind the scenes to join us at PDN Live. And Shannon, you're welcome to join us again. But Sam, I appreciate you being able to do this, being awesome about filming.
All right. Well, everybody have a great night, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks.